Welcome to The Deep Dive. We're the podcast where we really get into a stack of sources, pull them apart, and hopefully give you some new ways of looking at things.
That's the plan.
And today, our mission, our deep dive, is into a really fascinating collection. Nassim Nicholas Taleb's The Bed of Procrustes, Philosophical and Practical Aphorisms.
Ah, Taleb. Yes. Known for Fooled by Randomness, the Black Swan. He definitely makes you think.
He certainly does. And you might know those bigger books, but this one, The Bed of Procrustes, it's different. It's all aphorisms. And our goal here is really to unpack this central metaphor he uses, the Procrustean bed.
Right.
And see how he uses it to shed light on, well, pretty much everything, human behavior, society, how we think we know things, all through these short, sharp aphorisms.
It's about offering a new lens, isn't it? Challenging those hidden biases we all carry around.
Exactly. And just to give you a taste right off the bat, here's one from the book. The person you are the most afraid to contradict is yourself.
Oof. Yeah, that one. That hits home, doesn't it? It's classic Taleb, though. Makes you immediately turn inward.
Totally. A real punch to conventional thinking.
Yeah.
Now, like we said, this dive should give you that new lens, help spot those assumptions. Let's start then with the core idea. The Procrustean bed. It comes from Greek mythology.
That's right, yeah. Procrustes. He was this innkeeper figure in Greek legend from Attica.
Not a very nice one, I gather.
No, not at all. His hospitality was pretty twisted. He'd lure travelers in, offer them a bed. But the catch was everyone had to fit this one specific bed perfectly.
Okay. How did that work?
Well, if you were too tall, he'd chop off your legs.
Ouch.
And if you were too short, he'd stretch you out on a rack until you fit. Grim stuff.
Definitely grim. So how does Taleb take this really gruesome old story and apply it today?
He uses it as a metaphor for how we humans deal with complexity and the limits of our knowledge. You know, instead of changing our models or admitting we don't understand something
It
perfectly.
changes the reality instead.
Exactly. We force life, the world, messy reality into what he calls crisp, commoditized ideas, reductive categories, specific vocabularies, and prepackaged narratives. We do it backwards.
Ah, the backward fitting. So we trim the person, not adjust the bed.
Precisely. We change the wrong variable. And Taleb's point is stark. He says, every failure of what we call wisdom, coupled with technical proficiency, can be reduced to a Procrustean bed situation.
Wow. Okay. That's a big claim.
Uh-huh.
He gives that striking example about schools, right?
He does. It's quite provocative. He says, few realize that we are changing the brains of school children through medication in order to make them adjust to the curriculum rather than the reverse.
Yeah, that really flips the usual perspective, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And it's a perfect example of this Procrustean impulse he's talking about. But it's not just schools. He sees it everywhere.
Like where else?
Well, think about regulations that are too rigid, top-down governments that don't adapt, even academia sometimes. Or our daily lives, the way gyms structure exercise, the daily commute, the whole concept of employment itself.
So systems where we're sort of forced to fit in, rather than the system adapting to us.
That's the idea he's pushing, that we're constantly being subtly, or not so subtly, shaped to fit these pre-existing structures.
Okay, let's shift focus slightly. Taleb talks about modernity having these unseen costs, these paradoxes.
Yeah.
He calls them sucker problems. What's a sucker problem?
Right, the sucker problem. It's basically when your mental map just doesn't match the actual territory, the reality on the ground.
And people stick to the bad map anyway.
That's the insidious part, yeah. Even smart people cling to their flawed ideas. And he
Right.
argues modernity piles on these sucker narratives, like his example of walking for exercise.
Instead of just walking.
Exactly. Instead of just walking with no justification, it's like we need this complicated modern reason for doing something totally natural.
And he has some pretty blunt statements about this, doesn't he? Like the ones about social media or health foods.
Oh, yeah. He doesn't mince words. Things like, social media are severely antisocial, health foods are empirically unhealthy, knowledge workers are very ignorant, and social sciences aren't scientific at all.
Those are fighting words for some people.
Definitely contrarian takes. But he's trying to expose these hidden contradictions, the downsides of things we often just accept as good or as progress, and this leads right into his views on work.
Which are also pretty strong, I remember.
Very. He says things like, work destroys your soul by stealthily invading your brain during the hours not officially spent working.
Ow.
And even more directly, those who do not think that employment is systemic slavery are either blind or employed.
Okay. Like, that's intense. He's really challenging the whole structure of modern professional life.
Absolutely, questioning the fundamental assumptions.
So if that's his view on work and employment,
Yeah.
what does he see as, like, actual success?
Well, for Taleb, it's quite different. He says, success is becoming in middle adulthood what you dream to be in late childhood.
Ah, so it's about authenticity,
Yeah.
staying true to some earlier vision.
It seems like it. Rooted in self-direction, not external stuff. He adds, the rest comes from loss of control, which is interesting.
Yeah. And he has this critique of modernity creating,
Yeah.
what was it, youth without heroism.
Right. Youth without heroism, age without wisdom, and life without grandeur. And he also says, modern efficiencies are deferred punishment.
Deferred punishment. So we think we're being efficient, but we're just kicking the can down the road,
Mm.
pushing the real cost off until later.
That seems to be the implication. Are we really gaining or just delaying the inevitable payback? It's a sobering thought.
And technology doesn't escape this critique either, does it? Even though we mostly see its progress.
No, it's right in the crosshairs. He writes, technology can degrade and endanger every aspect of a sucker's life while convincing him that it is becoming more efficient.
That's a strong statement. And then there's that comparison he makes.
The one about slavery, yeah. The difference between technology and slavery is that slaves are fully aware that they are not free.
That's uncomfortable, but it makes you pause.
It really does. It forces you to think about the hidden constraints.
Yeah.
And he connects this to the whole information age problem.
The calamity of the information age, he calls it.
Yeah. His argument is that the toxicity of data increases much faster than its benefits. Basically, more information means more delusions.
Why? Because our brains can't handle it.
That's his point. There's a mismatch between our, kind of ancient brain wiring and this incredibly complex data-heavy world we've built. We end up seeing patterns that aren't there, creating false stories.
Which leads us nicely into his ideas about knowledge itself,
Right.
how we know things. And his take is quite different, isn't it? Subtractive knowledge.
Exactly. He argues knowledge is subtractive, not additive. It's not about piling on more facts, but about knowing what does not work, what not to do.
So wisdom is about elimination.
In a complex world, yes. He says intelligence consists in ignoring things that are irrelevant, avoiding false patterns. It's a kind of disciplined ignorance, in a way, cutting through the noise.
That ties into distinguishing the unobserved from the non-existent. Can you unpack that a bit?
Sure. So imagine you've only ever seen white swans. You might conclude all swans are white. That's mistaking the unobserved, a black swan you haven't seen, for the non-existent. You're making a leap based on limited data.
Okay.
But contrast that with, say, gravity. You can't see gravity directly, but you see its effects everywhere. That's understanding something unobserved, the force itself,
Yeah.
that is definitely not unobservable in its consequences. It exists and matters, even if it's not obvious.
Right. So don't assume something doesn't exist just because you haven't seen it yet.
Pretty much. And this relates to his critique of prediction in academia, too. He talks about the scandal of prediction.
What's scandalous about it?
He says anyone voicing a forecast or expressing an opinion without something at risk has some element of phoniness.
Ah, skin in the game. Or lack thereof.
Exactly. It's about accountability. If you can make predictions all day long with no consequences for being wrong, well, what value does that have?
And he's similarly sharp about academics.
Oh, definitely. He famously says, academics are only useful when they try to be useless, say, as in mathematics and philosophy, and dangerous when they try to be useful.
Huh. What does he mean by that? Useful when useless.
I think he means when they're pursuing knowledge for its own sake, like pure math or deep philosophy, without trying to directly engineer society. The danger comes when they try to apply simplified academic models to complex reality, another Procrustean bed.
And he distinguishes between academics and scholars.
Yeah, scholars, but not academics. People like Darwin, Marx, Freud, Einstein. He sees them as doing real, lasting intellectual work, often outside or even against the grain of formal institutions.
Interesting distinction. So moving on from big ideas to how we perceive things, he says something about finding similarities versus differences.
Right. Regular minds find similarities in stories and situations. Finer minds detect differences. It's about the level of nuance and perception.
And there's that bit about the fool, the nerd, and the wise.
Yes. The fool generalizes the particular. The nerd particularizes the general. Some do both. And the wise does neither.
Okay, break that down. Generalizing the particular.
Yeah.
That's like seeing one event and assuming it's a universal rule.
Yeah, like that white swan mistake again. And particularizing the generals is maybe getting lost in tiny details and missing the bigger pattern.
And the wise avoids both traps.
That seems to be the idea. Resisting the urge to oversimplify, either by broad generalization or by getting stuck in specifics, it connects to his point that the more complex the system, the weaker the notion of universal. Universal rules often break down in really complex situations.
Which feels very relevant today. Now, shifting to human behavior, relationships, he has some aphorisms that are almost like psychological judo.
He does, like the best revenge on a liar is to convince him that you believe what he said.
Huh, yeah, that's clever. Or the one about defending your reputation.
Your reputation is harmed the most by what you say to defend it. It's often true, isn't it? The more you protest, the worse it looks.
It often is.
Hmm.
And he digs into things like humility, too.
He does. Most of what they call humility is successfully disguised arrogance. That's a cynical take, but maybe has a grain of truth.
And what about seeking advice when you secretly expect to fail?
Oh, yeah. When we want to do something while unconsciously certain to fail, we seek advice so we can blame someone else for the failure. That's uncomfortably insightful about human nature.
It really is. And on ethics, relationships, he notes that the worst pain often comes from people who once cared about you.
The worst pain inflicted on you will come from someone who at some point in your life cared about you. It's a sobering reflection on betrayal and the vulnerability in close relationships.
And he talks about true generosity.
He defines pure generosity as when you help the ingrate, someone you know won't thank you or repay you. That's contrasted with acts that might just be self-serving, looking for that reciprocal benefit or recognition.
That's a high bar for generosity.
It is. And then there are his thoughts on enemies and admirers.
Right, like bad-mouthing being a form of admiration.
Bad-mouthing is the only genuine, never-faked expression of admiration. Provocative, right? And maybe even more so. A good foe is far more loyal, far more predictable, and to the clever, far more useful than the most valuable admirer.
Wow. So a predictable enemy is better than a fickle friend.
That seems to be the gist. Again, challenging conventional wisdom about relationships.
And what about what's not said? He has a point about dating sites.
Yes. What organized dating sites fail to understand is that people are far more interesting in what they don't say about themselves. It's about the implicit, the gaps, the things left unsaid often being more revealing.
That makes sense. The curated profile isn't the whole story.
Not at all. And he has other tells too, like when someone says, "I am not that stupid," it often means that he is more stupid than he thinks.
Uh-oh. Note to self.
Haha, right. And when someone starts a sentence with simply, you should expect to hear something very complicated.
That one feels very true. Okay, let's move towards wrapping up. Robustness versus fragility. How does he define being robust?
He gives a great contrast using artists and politicians. Robust is when you care more about the few who like your work than the multitude who dislike it, artists. Fragile when you care more about the few who dislike your work than the multitude who like it, politicians.
So robustness is about not being easily swayed by negative opinions, focusing on the positive signal.
Exactly. And crucially, for the robust, an error is information. For the fragile, an error is an error.
Meaning the robust person learns from mistakes, while the fragile person just sees it as failure.
Precisely. The robust system or person uses setbacks to get stronger, like Mother Nature does. It ties into what he calls epistemic humility, knowing the limits of your knowledge, which he contrasts with modern overconfidence, that naive pseudoscientific autism he mentions.
So given all these complex, often counterintuitive ideas, why aphorisms, why this very old, very compressed form?
He sees power in that compression. He calls it cognitive compactness. Unlike, say, a quick TV soundbite that loses meaning, he thinks an aphorism gains information by being dense. He views each one as a standalone, compressed thought, a complete little narrative, and he traces the form way back. Scriptures, Heraclitus, Nietzsche, the Arab poet al-Mutanabi. It has a long, distinguished history.
And the idea is that you don't really explain them.
Right. He says you never have to explain an aphorism like poetry. This is something that the reader needs to deal with by himself. The work is partly on the reader.
So the best ones make you think, maybe even revisit them.
Exactly. He thinks the best aphorisms are those that take you more than one reading to realize that they are important truths. They're meant to stick with you, to provoke, not just provide easy answers.
Okay. So pulling it all together, what's the main takeaway from this deep dive into the Bed of Procrustes, if you had to boil it down?
I'd say it's really an invitation to become more discerning, to start recognizing these Procrustean beds everywhere in your own thinking and society's structures. Doing that is key to navigating uncertainty and maybe finding some genuine wisdom.
So questioning assumptions, looking beyond the obvious.
Yeah. And embracing ways of thinking and living that are more robust, less easily forced into neat, but ultimately limiting boxes. It's about resisting being trimmed or stretched to fit someone else's bed.
That's a great summary. And maybe a final thought for you, our listener, to chew on, inspired by Taleb. Consider which beds you might be trying to force yourself or maybe others into, and what freedom, what liberation might come if you could just change the bed instead of trying to change the person.